Okay, it is the midweek message for this week before Thanksgiving. So here it is. If our parents were all about orthodoxy, then our children are all about orthopraxy. Orthodoxy means right doctrine. Orthopraxy means right action or right practice. Have you noticed how important actions and praxis are to our kids and to their kids? And honestly, it's not difficult to start acting in right or laudable ways. We don't have to be perfect or know everything, in order to be kind, in order to do something that's good and proactive. Mind you, we do need to know enough to act in a way that doesn't harm others or ourselves, but that's a fairly low bar. That's a pretty basic ground rule. So Jan Richardson writes about this. I just love her writing, and I love her poetry, but I also love her writing and her thoughts. And she's talking about being a blessing to others. So she starts with Matthew 25:31 to 46. Well, actually, I think it's just Matthew 31. Anyway, doesn't matter. It says, "Come, you who are blessed," Jesus says, "for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, but you welcomed me in. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." And then she has this poem called "You Who Bless." You who are yourselves a blessing, who know that to feed the hungering is to bless, and to give drink to those who thirst is to bless, who know the blessing in welcoming a stranger and giving clothes to those who have none, who know to care for the sick is a blessing, and blessing to visit the prisoner. May the blessing you have offered now turn itself toward you, to welcome and to embrace you at the feast of the blessed. Beautiful. She goes on to say, "When was it that we saw you?" Of course, the story where Jesus talks about, like people who did do these things, and they say, "Well, when did we see you and do this, Lord?" By his words in Matthew 25, Jesus assures us that our greatest sin lies not in having the wrong theology or refusing to believe as others would have us believe, or failing to take him to a place he has never gone. No, she says, our sin lies in neglecting to recognize and respond to him where he already is. Jesus gets awfully specific in telling us where we can find him. Each of the habitations he lists here is marked by lack. Lack of food, lack of water, lack of hospitality, lack of clothing, lack of health, lack of freedom. Christ chooses these places, inhabits these spaces, and waits for us to show up. Waits, too, for us to recognize those places in ourselves. He knows that if we haven't recognized the poverty within our own souls and how he dwells there, it's hard to see him and serve him in others without being patronizing. Lord, when was it that we saw you? And she finishes by saying, I wonder what Christ, this sovereign who came in such a ragged, radical guise, has in store for the season to come, how he'll show up, where he'll invite me to see him. Thank you, Jan, for your beautiful words. So where does Jesus invite us to see him? That's the thing about right action, orthopraxy. It is always trying to see through God's eyes and to act out of a sense of what God would do. What would Jesus do? Sure, we need some orthodoxy, but we really need some orthopraxy. I see it in our children a lot, the need to do something substantive that helps, that makes a difference. It might not change the world, but it can change our piece of the world. And together, those actions have a powerful and lasting effect on the world around us and the people in the community practices around us. And that does change the world. So I know I've talked with you guys about the Simple Way, a group in Philadelphia. I know I've shared their story with you, but so here's a bit from their website because this is orthopraxy. This is right action, what they chose to do. So they say it all started when, in 1995, dozens of homeless families had moved into an abandoned Catholic church building up in North Philadelphia. They were eventually told by the archdiocese that they had 48 hours to move out or they would be arrested. With nowhere to go, these courageous mothers and children hung a banner on the front of the building that said, "How can we worship a homeless man on Sunday and ignore one on Monday?" So these families held their own press conference and they announced that they had talked with the real owner of the building, God, and God said they could stay there until they found somewhere else to go. And that was the spark that lit the fire of the Simple Way. A few years after the takeover of the church ended, which was in January of 1998, some of the students who had been a part of that movement pooled their money together and they bought 3234 Potter Street in Philadelphia, not far from there. They took an old shoe repair store and they made it their home. Before long, they grew into other abandoned houses on the block. And since that experience in 1995, they've been inspired by the early church in the book of Acts, where the Bible says the early Christians shared all their possessions in common, gave freely to those in need, and met in each other's homes for worship. The gospel was lived out of dinner tables and living rooms. And now, they say, after over 2 decades, an intentional community has turned into a little village of neighbors sharing life and working together. So that's from their website. These people recognize the richness of a way of life together and that pooling their resources and working together could make such a difference in the lives of people who really needed it, and that living all together was actually a really beautiful way of life. So they now help their wider community with services and counseling and outreach. They do all kinds of really great things, and they're sustainable. They've been doing this, since the mid 90s. And so this is another little chunk from their website. It says we're a small organization supporting neighbors in building a neighborhood where we all belong and we all thrive. We celebrate together, we garden and work to make our neighborhood beautiful. We collaborate locally in practical ways like working for food security and connecting people with nearby resources. When we run into bigger systems that throw obstacles in our neighbor's way, we advocate for systemic change together. Ultimately, we envision all of our neighbors coming to a place of security that enables growth and flourishing. We started when a group of friends moved into Kensington who felt motivated to love and care for people in our neighborhood and around the world. And now we're a mix of folks who grew up in Kensington and others who became neighbors more recently. Our work is rooted in genuine love for each other. We're so honored to have a story that inspires others to act. Has our story sparked a desire for you to follow Jesus every day with your body in your town? We encourage you to go for it. Even as we focus locally, we want to see others equipped and active in their own neighborhoods. We do that by partnering with others who offer tools and strategies. I have found them over the years to be so inspiring because what they do and what they did, it was a quiet and quietly radical act. What they've done is make a beautiful, rich tapestry of life together and to invite and welcome others in. And they've grown and learned over the years. The trajectory is really interesting if you have any interest in looking at them, but they also equip others to help people in their neighborhood to be the love of God in the world. Orthopraxy. Okay, Marcus Borg, a great theologian, discusses gratitude and its consequences, the consequences of gratitude, its effects, a particularly relevant perspective this week preceding Thanksgiving. He says, gratitude is very different. It is, and this is important, it is both a feeling and an awareness. As a feeling, it is often accompanied by a sensation that is at least metaphorically physical, a virtual breaking open of the rib cage, an opening of the heart, a flooding of the self with sheer gratefulness. As an awareness that persists beyond the feeling, it is the realization that life, all of life, our lives, are a gift. Indeed, the words gratitude and grace have the same root. None of us created ourselves. None of us is self-made. If our lives have turned out well, how much of that is the product of our own individual achievement, and how much is the product of the genes with which we were born that gave us a level of physical vitality, intelligence, health, and longevity? How much is the product of the family we were born into with its values and economic level? How much is the product of the country and time in which we were born? Yes, individual responsibility and achievement matter. And there are people whose lives are triumphs over adversity. But how much of our lives have depended upon circumstances that we did not create? The notion of self-made persons who deserve all the success and wealth they've received is simply wrong, says Marcus Borg. Indeed, deservedness is the opposite of gratitude, even if it occasionally produces prayers of thanksgiving. As both a feeling and an awareness, gratitude is a virtue with ethical consequences. When we feel most grateful, it is impossible to be cruel or callous, brutal or indifferent. And gratitude, as the awareness that life is a gift, precludes the hard-heartedness that often accompanies the ideology of the self-made person. The latter often leads to, God, I thank you that I am not like other people. We know that story of the Pharisee. Gratitude and transformation go together. Gratitude and transformation go together. Sometimes it is the experience of deep gratitude that changes us. Sometimes gratitude is the product of transformation. Thanksgiving can leave us unchanged, but gratitude does not. It changes us. Finally, gratitude and doxology, the exclamation, praise God from whom all blessings flow, go together. There are also secular forms of doxology. Not only theists can sing doxologies, but grateful people, whether religious or secular, understand that our lives and all that is are a gift. Life is not about tenaciously holding on to and justifying what we have. It is about living as grateful people, aware that all that we are and have is a gift. So that's a quote from Marcus Borg, fairly lengthy, but it was so good I wanted to share it with you. When our orthopraxy, when our right practice flows out of gratitude for the love, the teachings, and the walking in faith that we do together with God and each other, amazing and transforming things happen, and we are changed by that. We can be a blessing. We experience God's love and care, and our response is gratitude and right action. And this gratitude flows out of us to others, all of God's children, as a practice of compassion and joy. So it's both an emotion and an awareness. And further, it is a practice, orthopraxy. Actions that move towards the commonwealth of God. May we embrace our orthopraxy, our right actions, as our response to the love that God is. All right, in this with you together. See you next week.